La réponse est évidente. Une nuée de managers et d'employés de maisons de disques, voire d'aventuriers, se précipite sur la ville de Liverpool pour signer tous les groupes locaux. Le Merseybeat était né. D'ailleurs, tous ces gens ont connu les Beatles. Des Beatles qui ont débauché leur batteur Ringo Starr dans un groupe tout à fait local, Rory Storm and the Hurricanes. On enregistre donc à tout va. On enregistre les Swingin' Blue Jeans, Billy Kramer et ses Dakota et autres Zurcher. Ces groupes sonnent tout à fait proches des Beatles. Ils ont même parfois derrière eux Brian Epstein, qui est le manager de vous savez qui. Un conte de fées alors que l'histoire de cette tribu Mersey? Pas si sûr. La BBC, bonne fille, a retrouvé tous les protagonistes de cette saga dont le scénario bat les meilleurs soap-opéras hollywoodiens. Il sera ici question de trahison, des idéaux du début abandonnés, de batteurs qui deviennent fous et veulent chanter, de managers à gros cigares qui effacent les bandes du disque en public à la caverne. Certainement, la ville de Liverpool, dure, hantée de bandes, ville passionnelle, a joué son rôle. Autre point, Liverpool est une ville petite et une fois que tous les managers eurent signé des contrats avec tous les guitaristes, on découvrit les limites de la tribu Mersey. Aujourd'hui d'ailleurs, l'histoire officielle du rock a quelque peu préféré oublier cette saga passionnante. Dommage. Écoutez les hits, retrouvez le beat, vive la tribu Mersey.
Pour la majorité des gens, le Merseybeat, du début des années 60, est le plus souvent associé au groupe qui change à la face de la pop music, les Beatles. Pourtant, au milieu des années 60, d'innombrables groupes originaires de Liverpool dominèrent les charts d'une façon exceptionnelle. Pendant un temps, il sembla que la vague de hits ne s'arrêterait jamais, mais au bout de quelques années, la source se tarit. Les goûts évoluèrent, les Beatles explosèrent, laissant derrière eux les groupes à l'origine de la première véritable contribution britannique à la pop music. Voici l'histoire de ces groupes et de cette période incroyablement féconde.
Mersey, 'cause this land's the place I love. Little children, you better tell what you see. Now I was feet off at the pool, in the port of Liverpool.
Pourquoi cette explosion musicale a-t-elle eu lieu à Liverpool à cette époque particulière? Personne n'a jamais pu donner de réponse définitive. Peut-être la situation de Liverpool, port, ouvert aux individus, aux marchandises et aux influences en tout genre, y est-elle pour quelque chose? Ce qui est certain, c'est qu'à la fin des années 50, gorgés de rhythm and blues américains et de skiffle britannique, les adolescents de toute la ville ne pensent qu'à faire de la musique. Première étape, se procurer une guitare. Mais les guitares à des prix abordables ne se trouvent pas facilement.
So I think I sent one for one out to Daily Mirror. I think John Lennon sent for the same one. They were made like orange box. I think they were made in Spain with 6 strings. They were virtually untunable. No scratch plate, because I remember getting a sheet of plastic to cut a white plastic scratch plate out and screw it on.
I was playing guitar at a very young age, you know, just the acoustic guitar and like learning all these pop songs. I used to sit on the top of the stairs in the house because it was all echoey. And I thought it sounded great.
The easy things that you could play, I found at that time, were the skiffle things. If you had a guitar and you knew 3 chords, you could play almost anything. I had the old beat-up acoustic thing. I used to stand on the corner in my hometown of Bootle, playing Lolly Donegan songs, Rock Island Line and things like that.
Down the Rock Island Line, she's a mighty good road. The Rock Island Line is the road to ride. Yeah, the Rock Island Line is a mighty good road.
Skiffle was like an American country western blues. And we listened to these songs like Rock Island Line. I thought, that's fabulous.
If you can imagine a T-chess bass with a piece of string and somebody trying to make notes out of it, well, it was with a pinch of salt and tongue in the cheek, but people loved it because they were going out and they were dancing to it as well.
Une fois que l'apprenti musicien maîtrise son instrument, fût-ce une washboard, le plus difficile reste à faire, entrer dans un groupe. Ralph Ellis se voit proposer d'intégrer un groupe bien établi de jazz traditionnel et de skiffle, les Blue Jeans.
And we stopped and we talked and he said, we're looking for another guitar player singer. Would you be interested in joining the Blue Jeans? Well, it took me about a third of a second to think about it and said, I'd love to. And that was probably one of the biggest thrills of my life when I actually joined the Blue Jeans, and then I went and bought the Martini shirt and the light blue jeans. And I thought I was real cat's whiskers when I wore those.
Tout premier leader de la scène du Merseybeat, les Blue Jeans jouent encore du jazz traditionnel. Mais pour les plus jeunes, c'est le rhythm and blues américain qui compte.
I actually got the first record player in our house through a kind of rich aunt who had a sweet shop on a corner. But previous to that, I'd already been out and bought at least 7 or 8 records which I could not play at all. I used to sit there reading labels. You know, night after night, just, you know, completely engrossed in the names, Little Richard and his band and all his other little names underneath.
Shack go down by the Union Hall when the dots start jumping. I have a ball, I'm gonna rock it up.
I was at a fairground with a couple of mates, and I still remember it to this day. It was Rip It Up by Little Richard, and it was like a smack in the mouth. It was like, you know, as soon as it started, oh, have that.
On the way back from school, I went to David's house, and he put on this record by a man called Elvis Presley, which was Heartbreak Hotel and Hound Dog. I went, oh, what is that?
When I heard Heartbreak Hotel and I heard the guitar sounds, I thought, how can we get these sounds? And I seen this guitar in the window. It was the most oddest looking guitar that I'd ever seen. It was 1 inch thick and it was like a plank of wood. But I liked it for the shape. It was an Antoria. But of course, I failed to realise with it not being a cello type guitar, you needed an amplifier to go with it. Well, the amplifiers again in 1958 were thin on the ground. So we made this amplifier up. It's like it had 2 valves in. It was in a cabinet 18-inch square. And I put a bolt of lightning across the front to make it look quite nice.
Cet intérêt pour le rock'n'roll engendre la formation de nombreux groupes. Bobby Thompson s'associe avec un garçon boucher de Stockport, Ted Taylor, pour former les James Boys. Ted, qui révèle vite des qualités de leader, est bientôt rebaptisé.
He was a huge kid. He was absolutely massive. King-size cigarettes had just come out, and I made some crack about him being a king-size singer. You know? So I think I gave him the name.
C'est ainsi que Ted Taylor devient King Size Taylor et son groupe les Dominoes. À Broad Green, Alan Caldwell adopte le pseudonyme de Rory Storm et son groupe se rebaptise les Hurricanes. C'est la mère de Rory, Vi, qui leur sert de manager.
We got quite good money because she was ruthless about the money. She said, they're not playing for that, you know. It was like when George Harrison in the early years in 1958 or 59 asked to join us, and she opened the door. And I can always remember this because we were rehearsing either under the stairs or in the hall. And he said, I brought my guitar, I'd like to, I heard Rory's looking for a guitarist. And I said to him, look son, you're too young, they're older than you. They're too old for you, son. And shut the door. And that was the end of it, like, you know. We could have had George Harrison in the band, you know.
One fine day, along came this fella, John Hutchinson, who lived around the corner. And I didn't know at the time, but he was in a band called Cassin and Casanovas. And they were looking for a bass player. So he said to me, can you play the bass guitar? I said, certainly. Having no idea at all, not ever having seen one. And for this first gig, I got £2. And the wage then was only like £2.10. And I thought, £2 for 1 hour? This is it.
Brian Jones est invité à rejoindre un autre nouveau groupe, les Vegas 5.
Jeff knocked on the door and asked me if I sang. And I said, yes, I do. So he said, would you like to join a band as a singer? So I said, well, I've just bought this tenor saxophone yesterday. So he said, well, bring that along and, you know, play that, which was ridiculous, really, because I only had it a day.
So he came in and he brought the sax along. Well, it was pretty awful. But he was a good singer. So we kept him on.
I used to sing a third of the songs. There was three singers in the band. So when the other 2 singers were doing their songs, I used to sort of honk in the background on one note And then the next night I might get a bit more adventurous and sort of start honking on 2 notes.
Le groupe commence à faire de la publicité dans le journal local pour trouver des concerts.
We actually bought the paper that evening to see if our name was in it, and we saw this thing called The Undertakers, this band called The Undertakers. So we didn't see our name, the Vegas 5, advertised, so we phoned up the agent, and he said, oh no, there's been a misprint. If you look in the funeral column, the Vegas 5 is in the funeral column, and The Undertakers is in the actual gig that we were doing. So just before we went on, we learnt the Death March in the dressing room.
And then straight into Johnny Be Good, and that then was the advent of The Undertakers.
I used to do a song called The Monster Mash. And then the thing is, the crowd started getting used to me coming out of the coffin. So what I used to do, I used to sneak round the back, and they used to anticipate me coming out of the coffin, but I'd come from behind and I was dressed up as a monster.
You go back to a gig you'd done, say, 6 months before at one price as the name of another band, and you go in as The Undertakers doing marginally the same type of material. And you come, and they used to say, oh, yeah, you come. I said, yeah, but look at the show you've had. Totally different show to what you got as the Vegas 5.
I was still working in the butchers at that time, and I was able to get lots of props from the butchers, like a tin of sheep's eyes. I used to throw these eyes at people, and the next thing is you'd see these girls walking around with like 3 eyes. One, like the eyes would be stuck in the middle of the forehead.
Like I used to sing numbers like I Remember You, and Jackie used to sing When I Fall in Love. So, you know, we were very sort of, I suppose you say commercial band in those days.
Tous les groupes de cette scène bourdonnante évoluent constamment. Cass and the Casanovas deviennent les Big Three, un des groupes phares du Merseybeat.
Adrian had seen this political headline in the paper. You know, I think it was probably Khrushchev and whoever they were, the big heads of state of those guys. Big Three meeting in somewhere, New York or something. And he went, that's it, we're all quite tall, about 6 foot tall or something like that, and that's it, the Big Three.
Oh, they were great, you know, I mean, Johnny Hutch on drums, you know, he's a great character, and Griff on guitar, and Johnny Gus on bass. Oh, he's singing Little Richard numbers. I just stood there with my gobbo, oh, bloody hell, that's great, he's going that, you know, they were a very good band.
I've taken a blind lap off my pride, oh now, some other guy now, well, he got the best girl I ever had, oh, and I'm a lonely one, lonely as I can be, oh, now.
Les noms sont extrêmement importants. Rory Storm, le leader des Hurricanes, oblige ses musiciens, dont un certain Richard Starkey, à adopter des pseudonymes.
He was already Rory Storm, but we were the Hurricanes, so he said, you can't have names like John Byrne or Richard Starkey. The names have got to be changed. I'd seen the old Peggy Lee film, Johnny Guitar, so I said, that'll do me, I like the sound of that.
Play it again, my Johnny.
And Ringo used to wear the rings and that. We said Ringo Starr. Oh, and they said, oh, if we call these names, this is Liverpool, it's a bit sicious and people will skitters, you know. I said, don't worry about that. Those names, so that was the names that we took and we stuck to them, you know.
Une fois les pseudonymes choisis, Rory se met en tête de devenir une légende locale.
Hey, all you women, don't come around.
He'd get down to the girls on the front, sit on the front of the stage. He'd get a giant comb in the middle of a number, just stop. Comb his hair, you know, sure the sideburns are all right.
Well, I can tell by the way that you look at me.
We were in Birkenhead in a place called the Majestic Ballroom, and he'd go into the box and do a song, and then he'd stand on the edge of the box and try and jump from the box back onto the front of the stage. Now, you were talking, well, a good 20 foot. Now, he did it a few times, but one time he done it, and he broke his leg, had to be carted off. Another time he broke his arm. He wasn't afraid, he had how could I put it? He didn't have any nerves.
Well, no, you don't love me no more.
Pendant que Rory se forge une solide réputation, un jeune employé au chemin de fer essaye de trouver un nom pour son groupe.
I was sitting home one day and I thought, hang on a minute. Mars from Marsden and Bars of Music. We'll call ourselves Jerry Marsden and the Mars Bars. Oh, yes! That is a good rock and roll name. My dad wrote to the Mars Bar Company. Said, can my son use your name? And they wrote back, no! How dare he? It's a trade name. He can't use the Mars Bar. So he changed it. I was watching television one afternoon and they had an athletics meeting on. The guy said, the pacemaker in this race. And I thought, oh, that's the name. The Pacemakers. What a great name for a band.
Whole lot of shaking going on.
Autre futur groupe phare du Merseybeat, les Searchers sont en train de se former.
John and I were sort of the mainstay. We'd get together. We were the two guys who got together either in his house or my house, and we'd play lots of instrumental things. You know, I'd play the lead. John would back me up on the rhythm guitar. I went to a pub called the Cross Keys. It was pretty well attended. It was packed all the time, especially at weekends. And I was in there one Saturday night, and there was a guy up on stage singing Elvis songs, and I thought, he's pretty good, you know, he's got the action. This is Tony Jackson.
Tony Jackson s'associe avec les deux autres, d'abord en tant que guitariste.
As I was the only one in a full-time job, I was designated to be the bass player because I was the only one who could afford a bass guitar.
Il recrute ensuite le batteur Chris Curtis qui va élargir leur horizon musical.
We couldn't get over the three of us, Tony, John and myself. The record collection that Chris Curtis had. He'd come up with all these songs. Yeah, it sounds great, let's rehearse that.
And Chris used to stand up, he never sat down until he stood up. And he was wild.
She knows how to sing that thing all right. Yeah, I know. All right. Yeah. Tell your mama, tell your pop, gonna send it back and knock it off, oh baby. That's what I'm on now. That's what I get time. Whoa, hit it, come on.
Une des plus grandes stars du Merseybeat est Billy J. Kramer qui débute sous son véritable nom, William Ashton, sans aucune ambition de devenir un frontman.
We had another singer, but then he decided that he didn't want to be in the rock and roll business, and he opened a hairdressing shop and left the band, and then the band sort of pushed me into being the singer, and I had no experience whatsoever. I would have been quite happy to strum the guitar and stand behind somebody else.
There was over 250 bands in Liverpool at that time, and every one of those bands used to play in clubs in Liverpool on a Saturday night. I think there was more people in bands than what there was audiences.
I don't think there was a band out of work on a Saturday night. And you used to do 2 or 3 gigs a night, you know, in those days. Like we'd do the Craftsman's in Ellesmere Port, come back down and do the Otter Park Ballroom, and then do an all-nighter at the Iron Door.
Well, it's Saturday night now, just got paid, full of my money, dough, trying to save.
Les groupes se produisent régulièrement dans les salles de bal, les clubs et les salles municipales. Mais un endroit va devenir indissociable du Merseybeat.
There was a club called the Cavern, which was in town, which was a jazz club. And we thought it'd be nice to get down and play there, you know, instead of just jazz, play some rock. So we went to a guy called Ray McFall, who was the boss. And one afternoon he said, OK, come and do an afternoon session for me over Wednesday. We did it. And it was such a success that the jazz club suddenly stopped playing jazz and played rock and roll.
We've got a dance in Liverpool. The cats and chicks really think it's cool. It started off with just a romp. Now they call it the Cavern Stomp.
There's holes in the floor. You have to watch where you're going. You know, your leg would go down a hole somewhere, like broken ankles, you're trying to dance, you know.
It had that certain sort of atmosphere, and also your clothes smelt of the cavern. My late mother always used to say, you've been to that cavern place, haven't you?
Bob Wooler was there, he was the compere, as he was around Liverpool on lots of venues. He was the man, Bob Wooler.
He was the guy who kind of, the best of sellers, he used to call it, you know. And Did a lot of other gigs too around the local dance halls and all that, you know. We had a great style.
This is Bob Wooler saying welcome to the best of sellers. We got the hi-fi high and the lights down low, so here we go with the Big Three show.
En 1961, la scène locale bat son plein. Puis, plus par hasard qu'à dessein, un nouvel univers s'ouvre au groupe du Merseybeat à plusieurs centaines de kilomètres de Liverpool. Très vite, tous les groupes de Liverpool s'embarquent pour Hambourg, où ils reçoivent plus qu'une simple éducation musicale.
Everything was open 4 o'clock in the morning. There were strip shows, people wrestling in mud, cafes open. In Liverpool, everything gets shut at midnight.
Horst Fascia, the manager of the Star Club, rough, been in jail for killing a man. He was a boxer, and he killed a man in the ring, and they jailed him for it. Great guy.
The way he used to speak, he said, tomorrow, he said, you go to the end of the Grocer Freiheit and you turn right and there's a gun shop and you buy some gas pistols. And I said, what do you want gas pistols for? He said, because you fucking need them in Hamburg. And then they gave us this badge with Star Club written on. He said, you keep that badge in your coat everywhere you go in Hamburg or you get killed. He said, but with that badge in, they know you work for Manfred and me and no one touches you.
So he said to Kashmir, where's our hotel? He said, you don't have a hotel. This is where you live. I said, where? And it was 2 rooms at the side of the stage.
And you'd get a rota whereby you'd say, well, you know, you start at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and you've got 4 groups going on after you and then you're on again at 12 o'clock midnight and then you're on again at 4 o'clock in the morning. And, you know, whoever's got the last spot, like, you're walking home to your hotel at 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning.
There used to be a lady that worked in the toilets, and she had like a little table on the door of the toilet, and he used to go up and used to say, have you got something for sore throat? And then she used to like give you these little Preludin tablets.
For 1 mark, you got 3. Well, that stopped you eating, great, and that stopped you drinking. You didn't really want to drink, right? So it was cheap. And so consequently, after 1 month playing at the Star Club, I came back 2 stone lighter and a nervous wreck.
Pourtant, un groupe trouve l'accueil du public hambourgeois plus que froid, les Swinging Blue Jeans qui continuent alors de jouer du jazz traditionnel.
Well, the jammers, first time he played, were gobsmacked. They just looked. You know, they're totally gobsmacked at this. What's that?
I met my pretty bride down by the riverside, and we were really swinging, and the double bass was going, and Tommy was on the banjo, and it was really, really driving stuff that we played, and that they liked, but the German audience didn't understand it.
We had to blend an electric bass, show them the technicalities of it, how to use the amp, and we wrote a list of songs out for them, and the banjo player was virtually redundant.
We were there for a month, and we couldn't go on playing jazz for a month, and he wouldn't give us our tickets to go home for a month, and so we changed to rock and roll.
Good golly, Miss Molly, yeah, you sure like the ball. Oh, good golly, Miss Molly, yeah, you sure.
Tous ces groupes profitent pleinement de cette expérience hambourgeoise. Grâce à elle, le Merseybeat progresse d'un cran vers la prééminence nationale.
The big turning point, I think, for that scene was when the Beatles came back from Hamburg, because they came back in all the black leather gear. They looked to the girls. They had a great amount of sex appeal.
Just advertised his first appearance back from Hamburg, and they had the leather jackets on. The place was packed. The heat was terrific, and they went down a bomb.
The first time I saw the Beatles, I actually thought they were German, because a lot of people did. They were being billed as straight from Hamburg, because they were over there so much, and they looked so different to anybody else. The different hairstyles and all dressing in leather. But we thought, this is the place to go to. We need to go to Hamburg. And of course, there's no way we could have gone. We were just too young.
There's a great photograph somewhere of me and Tony at the Entry Institute. And Tony was still only 16. I was actually about 2 months before my 15th birthday. And we're trying to look, you know, dead cool and everything, with Coca-Colas with straws in.
We found that with both of us liked the Everly Brothers. And when we tried singing together, we found out we could sound just like the Everly Brothers. So we think, well, this is a good basis for a band. So we called ourselves the Mavericks. And Bob Wallace saw us and said, I think you're absolutely wonderful, but you need to be launched and you need a new name.
So we went down to town, me and Tony, and OK, what's the name of it? What are we going to be called? He said, the Merseybeats.
You came to me one summer night.
Les Merseybeats sont les derniers d'une longue liste de groupes. Dans cette atmosphère de compétition effrénée, chaque formation tente sans arrêt de débaucher les meilleurs musiciens des autres groupes. Rory Storm ne va pas tarder à en faire l'expérience.
Say the Beatles would stand at the side of the stage. Ringo was still playing with us. He was still our drummer. And they'd watch the shows because he was just so good, you know. He could put anything over.
C'est dans la résidence où il passe ses vacances que Ringo Starr reçoit un coup de téléphone.
We went up to the reception and Ringo picked the phone up. He goes, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, great, yeah, okay, yeah. And he said, oh, does it have to come off, you know? Because they would tell him to shave the beard off. And he didn't want to, you know. Does it have to? Oh, you moaned above that, you know. Next thing, he put the phone down and he said, sorry, Bob, I won't be joining the Dominoes. I'm going to join the Beatles. So I said, you've cracked it, son. Because you knew they were going to be so huge, you know.
Un des éléments clés du succès des Beatles est le jeune propriétaire d'un magasin de disques, Brian Epstein, qui devient leur manager. Mais les Beatles ne sont pas la seule corde à son arc.
Brian Epstein took them over, then he started casting his net a bit wider, Jerry and Scylla. And he took us over, and immediately there was no smoking on stage, no eating sandwiches, no beer, you know, on the piano and all of that. And you've got to dress more smartly, boys.
So I said, yes, Brian, we'll sign up for you. And all that meant to me was giving him the diary, not thinking really of fame. So, right, Brian, fill that, get us a few more quid. And if anything happens, we'll have it.
Brian said, Billy Kramer has a group called the Coasters and they don't want to turn pro. By this time, we were a professional band. He said, would you consider backing him, you know, because John Lennon has suggested that, you know, we approach you. So, to be quite honest with you, none of us were really up to back Bill because we thought, oh no, it takes Billy Fury off, you know, we want to be on our own, Brian. No, he said, no, the deal is for you to back Billy.
I don't think they were really into it. And they sort of, you know, he said, you can make your own records and back Billy on his records.
C'est ainsi que les Dakotas se retrouvent à accompagner Billy J. Kramer, une alliance qui va se révéler payante. Mais au moment d'enregistrer, Epstein commence à proposer des chansons à tous ses groupes, les testant souvent d'abord avec les Beatles.
And Brian rang me up, he said, Jerry, I think I've got a song for you. I said, oh, great, smashing, what is it? He said, it's a thing called How Do You Do It? He said, the Beatles have just recorded it, but they don't want to do it. John said, no, it's rubbish. So John said to Brian Epstein, give it to Jerry, he'll do it. So Brian rang me. He sent me the acetate of the Beatles. I thought, yeah, that's a good song. Anything to get on a record.
How do you do what you do to me? I wish I knew. If I knew how you do it to me, I'd do it to you.
Brian rung me on the Tuesday, because we knew on the Tuesday charts came out on Friday. Brian rung me and said, Jerry, how'd you do it's gone to #1? I said, oh, bloody hell. Thanks, Brian. Put the phone down. My mum was in the back kitchen. I said, Mum. She said, what? I said, how'd you do it's gone to #1? She said, what does that mean? I said, I think it means we're nearly famous.
You give me a feeling in my heart, like an arrow passing through it. Suppose that you think you're very smart, but won't you tell me how do you do it? How do...
Epstein utilise les talents de compositeurs de Lennon et McCartney pour propulser le Merseybeat sur le devant de la scène.
Brian gave us, like, Do You Want to Know a Secret? And it was just John Lennon singing Do You Want to Know a Secret on an acoustic guitar. And at the end, he sort of apologized for the quality of the song and flushed the toilet.
Billy s'incline devant Epstein et Do You Want to Know a Secret devient un hit.
Well, listen, do you want to know a secret? Do you promise not to tell? Whoa, whoa.
Mais pour son plus grand succès, Billy refuse de céder à Epstein et d'enregistrer une autre chanson de Lennon et McCartney, préférant son propre choix, Little Children.
It was a song that I'd found myself. I believed in the song. Brian Epstein was totally against me recording Little Children, and even went as far as to say that I'd insulted the two finest songwriters in the world.
I'm telling you, little children, you better tell what you see.
Little Children, I think really was the best record we ever did. And it sounds terrible when you've got John Lennon and Paul McCartney writing your first 4 records. But a lot of problems with that because Brian didn't want us to do it. So I remember in the studio there was a lot of rows.
Like you around, I wonder what can I do around little children like you.
Revenus de Hambourg avec un véritable son rock'n'roll, les Swinging Blue Jeans obtiennent un contrat avec HMV et sont confiés au producteur Wally Ridley.
Wally Ridley was more a Ronnie Hilton type of recording manager. He was very much middle of the road, Roger Whittaker, and that type of music.
Mr. Wally Ridley, the recording manager, controls the balance of the music so that the players will get the sound they really want.
For goodness sake, I got the hippie hippie shake.
When we came down with the Hippie Hippie Shake, he didn't rate that very much at all.
I got the hippie hippie shake.
He was saying he couldn't hear the words clearly, and Norman was saying, well, the hell with the words. People want to listen to the beat and they want the driving rock rhythm. The words are unimportant. And Wally Ridley was saying, well, he's been recording for years and it's the other way round.
For goodness sake, I got the hippie hippie shakes. Yeah.
When we did the first LP, we didn't have enough material. I can remember in the morning and before we broke for lunch, we said, well, that's all we've got. And Wally said, well, you can't have because the studio's booked for the day and it's very expensive. We said, well, you know, we'll have to come back. He said, well, you can't do that. You've got to use the time up. So we said, well, OK, you go off and have your lunch and we'll work some numbers out.
Sweets for my sweet, sugar for my heart.
Ensuite, c'est au tour des Searchers d'enregistrer, cette fois avec Tony Hatch.
But I can remember going into the studios and we rehearsed the song, and I think we did it in 3 takes, all standing around one microphone. And I thought it wasn't perfect. But of course, Tony Hatch, he's up in the box and he's saying, that's it, boys, we've got one, we've got a master. You know, we're saying, we can do a better one. No, that's it. That's good enough.
Et de nouveau, c'est un hit.
I would chase that bright star nightly and try to steal it from the sky. And I would bring sweets for my sweet, sugar for my honey. Your first sweet kiss thrilled me so.
Right down through the history of rock and roll, if you find a band that has a success with one record, you'll always find that the follow-up is very, very similar. So anyway, Tony said, I've got this song, a friend of mine has written it for you, blah, 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 great. And we did it, Sugar and Spice, sure enough, back up to the top of the charts. We actually found out later that Tony Hatch had written the song himself.
Sugar and spice and all things nice. You know that little girl is mine.
Fort de ce succès tout nouveau, Chris Taylor, le batteur haut en couleur des Searchers, commence à se prendre pour le leader du groupe.
Chris was the showman out the band, and because of that, although we were all equal guys and we all loved the same music and all that, Chris then began to get a bit, well, it's my band, you know, so I tell everyone what to do. And I think that's what the start of the friction was. I walked in the studio, all set up, and he just walked up to me and said, I don't want you to sing on this album, Tony. Your voice isn't good enough. Which, you know, I fell through the floor. I said, what do you mean? Well, that's a polite version of what do you mean? He said, no, Michael's going to do it. Mike's going to sing, take all the leads. You're just playing bass. I said, well, look, I've been lead singer on 2 albums, 2 number 1s. And then he says, I don't like the way you're playing bass. I want you to do it this way. So I blew my top, you know, and I said, Chris, I said, what the F&L are you on about? I said, you're the drummer in the band. I said, you don't lead it. I said, why don't you stick to your drums?
Tony perd la bataille contre Chris et se retrouve éjecté du groupe.
Your dreams of fame have all come true. Now I'm just a no one next to you.
I was expecting, stupidly like that, when the news broke that I was out the band, I'd have a flood of phone calls, like from Hollies or anyone who thought I could do a job for them. Will you join us, you know, Foremost or Merseybeat or somebody? But nothing came.
I wished him well, you know, I wished he would have made a big name. I mean, I didn't really want him to leave the band, but you get caught up in so many emotions in those circumstances.
En dépit de son nouveau groupe, les Vibrations, Tony est poursuivi par son passé au sein des Searchers.
My agent said, no one's going to book you with that name. They've got to know it's you. You've got to use your name up front. I say, yeah, but I don't want to be. He said, well, you won't get any bookings if you don't. So it ended up as Tony Jackson and the Vibrations. But it was just going to be the Vibrations. But just to get the bookings, and so people could say, oh yeah, Tony Jackson Searchers, you know, X or whatever. We'll go and see him.
Pendant que Tony essaye de mener une carrière solo, les Merseybeats décollent et plusieurs maisons de disques leur font les yeux doux.
We won a recording contract with Decca Records. At the same time, Fontana Records had been up to Liverpool to see us working at the Cavern. So we literally had 2 recording contracts and we didn't know which one to sign.
So we went back then to Bob Wooler and asked his advice. And he says, well, a brand new label and you're one of the first acts that they've signed up, they're going to spend more time and more money on you than if you sign up with Decca, who've got countless number of acts. I think since they lost the Beatles, I think they signed almost everybody.
It's love that really counts. Believe me, it's love that really counts. And maybe...
Avec 2 hits à leur actif, à la veille de connaître un immense succès, les Merseybeats essuient alors un coup très dur.
We started getting offers to go to Italy, to America, to Germany, to all these places. And Billy suddenly got very disillusioned with the whole thing, wanted to leave to open a hairdressing shop, and that was it.
Walk on through the wind.
Pour son 3e single, contre la volonté de Brian Epstein, Jerry Marsden décide d'enregistrer une chanson de Rodgers et Hammerstein.
We put it down, then George put the violins on and everything. And when I heard it, a week later I went in to listen to the tracks. And I went, ah! I said, oh, George, that's lovely. The string, I said, wonderful. He said, thank you. So Brian was there. And I said, that's the 3rd record. Brian nearly had a heart attack. And we put it out. And it was the fastest one to go to #1.
And you'll never
Walk Alone became something bigger than I'd ever anticipated. Because at Anfield, they would play the top 10 records from the charts. So when Walk Alone was #1, the last record they played was the #1, just before the kick-off. And the DJ would play them, and he would get to Walk Alone, just before kick-off. And the Cop, which held in those days like 25,000 people, started singing it.
and you'll never You know the best things in life are free, but you can keep the ball up and down bills. I want money, what I want, that's what I want best.
De retour à Hambourg, King Size Taylor et les Dominos enregistrent une flopée d'albums sous différents noms, dont un disque pour le chanteur écossais Alex Harvey.
Alex come roaring around one morning. It's like about 10 o'clock in the morning. We'd be in bed about half an hour. I've got to do an LP today. Now, do you like that? I've got to do an LP today because it's supposed to be a live album. So at the end of every song that we did, as soon as we come to the end, we all went, hey! We all put our own applause on, see? And then done it again. They played the track back to us. And we put our own applause on again, and we were all whistling and banging bottles, and it came out, it sounded so live, it was wonderful. And it came out, it was Alex Harvey and his soul band live at the Top 10 Hamburg, when in actual fact it was Alex Harvey and the Dominoes out the Reds in Polydor Studios.
À Liverpool, les Big Three ont enfin l'occasion d'enregistrer, mais leurs chances sont sabotées par un mauvais choix de chanson.
We were allowed to do an R&B tune for our first single, which was some kind of sop in the right direction, yeah? But from then on it went downhill rapidly. The songwriters were brought in, Mitch Murray, and By the Way was brought up, this song By the Way, which the Beatles had turned down as being, you know, awful.
I can tell that you're the one, by the way you keep me thinking of you. Oh, by the way, I love you.
And some bright spark had finally realised that these tunes they're recording is not what this band is about. So they thought, we'll make an album, a proper 12-inch album of Live at the Cavern, which we did. We recorded 2 whole sets, one after the other, allowing for mistakes in the control room, you know, with the tapes and etc. One More Time Boys and all this. Nobody paid to get in, it was packed, all screaming their brains out. They all knew us anyway. Bob Waller was there with his medicinal potions. And we did a whole album's worth, you know, at least 2 takes of each track. And what they did, they erased it. They erased most of it, except for those 4 tracks, which were on which were later called the Big Three EP at the Cavern.
Oh, when you see me in misery, come on, baby, stand by me, yeah. What I say, tell me what I say now.
Apart from that, we went to Decca Studios one day and recorded 4 or 5 other tunes, and they erased those as well. They lost them. Good, aren't they?
Cette suite de malchance, ajoutée à une mauvaise stratégie de leur maison de disques, met fin à la carrière des Big Three. Les Merseybeats, toujours sans bassiste, cherchent justement quelqu'un comme Johnny Gustafson.
I had this idea, I wonder if Johnny Gustafson would leave the Big Three, because I believe they're not doing much.
I just thought they're in the charts and they're making lots of money, and why not, you know? Why not? So it was a touch mercenary, really, I suppose. Well, it was, of course it was.
If you turn around, it wouldn't be good. Folks would say she only did what she should. Don't turn around.
The money was supposedly good. But then again, things happened, don't they? And they had this manager named Alan Cheetham. Nice name, isn't it? You can guess the rest.
Just wishing and hoping and thinking and praying, planning and dreaming. Her kisses will start that won't get you into the heart. So if you're thinking how great to love is.
La collaboration de Johnny avec les Merseybeats est brève. Billy Kinsley, l'un des fondateurs du groupe, veut reprendre sa place.
And I was the last one in the dressing room, and they're all sitting there, like very sort of long-faced and quiet, which is very unusual. And I sat down, what's happening? And Tony said, it's not really happening, is it? Well, it's a strange choice of words, because there'd just been this incredibly loud, for them, normal crowd reaction. And it was just, he had to say something, I suppose, which is, you know, I felt sorry for him later, years later. He had to try and explain. And they wanted Billy back. So, what can we say? You know, okay.
Pour Billy J. Kramer aussi, le vent est en train de tourner. Apparemment, son talent à choisir les bonnes chansons s'est épuisé.
Different writers have said in things that Paul McCartney never offered yesterday to anybody. But believe it or not, when I was doing that summer season in Blackpool, he played me Yesterday. And I said, I don't like it. I said, it's boring, Paul, and I want a rock and roll song.
The sun is fading away. That's the end of
would see things in the NME, like, where they'd have little goes at you, and it'd say, like, is Billy J. Kramer the ideal person to invite to your party? Because I've been drunk at somebody else's party the week before and insulted everybody, you know. Which, you know, it was a bummer, really.
I didn't like him very much. It's another reason why I left the band. He was drinking so heavily, and he was just abusive to everybody, including myself, and I just had enough. It just knocked all the stuffing out of me.
Certains des groupes les plus anciens du Merseybeat se séparent, preuve que le mouvement s'essouffle.
I got very depressed about the whole thing, and I went through a pretty bad spell for a while. I'm worrying about what the long-term future was, and having come from a very insecure background, you know, what the future was going to be after the band. And then we started to have one or two problems between ourselves, as bands do. And they just said to me one night, well, look, you know, if this isn't really working out, we're not getting on anymore, it might be better if you leave. So that's how it happened.
Feeling better now that we're through. Feeling better 'cause I'm over you.
I finished completely, totally, altogether. I put my Strat in its case and I put it away. And it stayed there for 26 years. Then I got a job with the Prudential, and I thought, well, I'll give it 12 months and see how it pans out. And I stayed there 25 years.
We did what I thought was some pretty good albums, and they were acclaimed, and people said, yeah, I love your latest album, you know. They got on the album charts, which was great, you know.
Every time that you walk in the room.
Bien qu'il soit le seul groupe avec les Beatles à placer ses albums dans les charts, les Searchers ne tournent plus que sur le circuit des cabarets.
We left Pie Records, and we were at a stage whereby, what's the career going to be? And of course, we got into the cabaret scene, nightclub market, which is a good scene. You know, it's a good living. It gives you what you've been used to.
The whole Liverpool thing was sort of dying. This is 1965. We'd stopped having hits. The Searchers had stopped having hits. Everybody basically had stopped having hits except the Beatles.
Les Merseybeats signent un nouveau contrat et leur carrière redémarre brièvement. Mais tant pour le groupe que pour le mouvement, la fin est proche. Une nouvelle génération de groupes, inspirée par les Beatles, écrit ses propres chansons et éclipse les groupes du Merseybeat.
I Stand Accused got us back into the charts. We made the top 20 again. But then after saying that, the two other lads got disillusioned with everything.
We came up with a solution that Tony and I would actually leave the Merseybeat and call ourselves the Merseys. And John and Aaron could carry on as the Merseybeats. We realised we weren't just a Liverpool band, we had to compete with, you know, everybody else. It was a necessity, really, because there was no more Merseybeat.
C'est la fin du mouvement. Face à l'hégémonie des Beatles, les autres groupes doivent se contenter de jouer dans les cabarets. Mais pendant ces quelques années des 60s, les groupes de Liverpool auront dominé le monde.
You're acting fun,